Okay, folks, you've made it back to Lesson 7 in U.S. History. We are now in the fourth quarter, so we're in kind of the end big push. Hope that the third quarter went well for you. You're able to get all the stuff done and in, and you're ready to start the fourth quarter in grand style. Pretty much at this point, we are looking at the modern U.S. history. We're really focusing on World War II to the modern day. That's what we're going to be looking at this quarter. And we're going to start off with this lesson dealing with kind of the precursors, or what led up to World War II. Obviously, things don't just kind of happen all of a sudden. There's things that happen in the beginning to lead up to that, and we talked about that related to World War I with the armistice deals and the alliances that occurred. And very similar to that, we had World War II, a number of different precursors. So we have two videos that we're going to take a look at this time that kind of walk through those elements that led up to World War II. The time frame we're looking at here is about 1931 to 1941, when the United States entered the Second World War. So let's take a look and see what's going on around the world. During the 1930s, we saw a rise of dictators. We saw the end of a number of different normally democratic governments, or even governments that had been focused on kings or emperors, and we moved to dictators, one individual or a small group of people that took over a large control of their entire country. And certainly were not voted in necessarily, but had the supreme power. And we see that in several different ways. We see it in Italy and in Spain in something called fascism, and a subset of that in Germany called Nazism with the Nazi Party. In the Soviet Union, we have communism. We talked a little bit about that before. And then in Japan, we have militarism, where the rise of the military becomes the leading proponent of change there. And the United States, after World War I, really kind of reconsiders its place in the world stage. You know, we've lost 100,000 men in World War I. A lot of people questioned whether we should have been there in the first place, and so there's a move to isolate our nation. Also, it doesn't help that our economy has gone into the tank with the Great Depression, and so there's a lot of talk about let's focus on America first and not worry about the remainder of the world. In fact, there's actually groups that get together kind of talk about what happened in World War I. Why were we there? Was it appropriate for us to be there? And one of the most important of those committees that really looked at that was called the Nye Commission. And those of you that know the history and a little bit about the geography of our lovely state of Nevada know Nye County. Nye County is named after the representative in Washington that led the Nye Commission. Also, the Neutrality Acts that are passed by Congress in 1935 and 1937 actually prohibit the sale of arms to any nation currently at war. It's a way for us to stay neutral, certainly help countries if we can, but if they're engaged in a war, we want to stay away from selling arms to them. So what is kind of some of the main things that lead up to the war? Well, we have one thing that happens in 1936, and that's the Spanish Civil War. The Spanish Civil War is started by a General Francisco Franco, who is a fascist leader, much like Mussolini in Italy and Hitler in Germany. And he takes on part of his own group in Spain to try to gain control of that country. And that's almost like a test run, especially for Germany. Germany sees this as an opportunity to test out its tactics, test out its new weapons and things of that sort for what they see as the coming storm of World War II. We also see the development of the Axis alliance. In World War II, we have two, the Allies and the Axis parties, or alliances. And the Axis is a group made up of Germany, Italy, and Japan. Those nations start to come together and talk a little bit about what happens if one of you is attacked, and how can we make sure that we're the most powerful of the alliances. President Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, is also promoting something called internationalism. He doesn't really believe in the idea of being an isolated country. He thinks that it's critically important the United States play a role on the world stage. And so he really talks about the fact that we need to be working on trading between nations, and that trade will create prosperity, it will create goodwill, and it will ultimately prevent war. So he's really pushing the United States to become more international in focus. And as we get closer to World War II, we certainly see the power of Nazi Germany and the power of Adolf Hitler rising. There's something called the Anschluss in Austria. Certainly Austria and Germany are very similar. They share a similar culture and history and language. But Hitler, being an Austrian and then becoming the leader of Germany, decides what he wants to do is make a greater Germanic world. And so he's going to take over or kind of incorporate Austria into Germany. And that's the first thing that happens. And that's certainly of concern to other European nations. And so they question Hitler on it and actually have a meeting called the Munich Conference in 1938, where the leaders of the main nations in Western Europe get together to talk about whether or not Germany is going to expand anymore. And Hitler, of course, promises that nope, we're not going to expand. We're not going to take over any more territory in Europe. And the British Prime Minister named Neville Chamberlain utters a very, very famous quotation that at the end of this meeting we have had peace in our time. And that's called appeasement. He felt that they had given Austria to the Germans, and that would keep Hitler happy. And of course, certainly we recognize that that did little but egg Adolf Hitler on. Because very soon, matter of fact, the same year in 1938, Hitler annexes what's then called Czechoslovakia, and then follows up with a very important pact in 1939 called the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact, which essentially says that neither Germany nor the Soviet Union will attack each other if the other goes to war. So what it does for Hitler is it prevents him from having to worry about a front on his east, the Soviet Union being to the east of Germany, that he can focus on the west, and really when he goes to war, what he wants to do is move west into France. So that gives you a little bit of a background of what's happening leading up to the beginning of World War II. In the second part of this discussion, we'll really look at what were the first shots fired and then how did the United States become involved. So if you would, go ahead and take a look at that second video from your course or your main lesson page, and we'll talk more about it then.